This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world.
So the goal has been to kind of build some structure into our podcast because of feedback and engagement from listeners. We're open to changing these or continuing to revise the way that our structure works. But the thought is to kind of cover 5 bullet points, one being general feelings of Michael and Matt for the week. You know, how are we feeling? Stressed, anxious, optimistic, discouraged because we broke a lot of stuff this week. What's the sales and marketing looking like for the number 2? We're going to dig into our engineering and R&D, big things that have been happening in the shop, company-wide updates and improvements that our team have been working on to make us more efficient as a manufacturing and engineering company. And lastly, we want you to learn more about us personally. So we'll be giving a couple tidbits at the last 5 minutes about us. So hopefully that helps. But you want to go first? General feelings of the week?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's been a weird week.
Okay.
So for me, there was a little bit of, emergency catch up on a few consulting projects we've been trying to power out. We've been running a little bit behind, so that's been frustrating, but we're finally catching up on some of the consulting stuff. I've come to the conclusion over the last week that maybe I've been focusing my efforts a little bit incorrectly in terms of the website, SEO. Had something kind of shady happen with our SEO firm that I'll talk about later, and they ended up getting fired.
Well, that's really interesting. I was actually going to ask you for your web. Is this your web developer too?
No, my web developer is great.
Okay.
His name is Mode. He's in India. He's amazing. But we've gone through 2 or 3 SEO firms, and it feels like they all kind of milk you for money. And then when you audit what they actually do, that becomes a challenge.
So Mode out of India, does he just do, because you're on a Shopify account, right? Does he do WordPress by any chance?
I think just Shopify.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were
we got to keep the structure, Matt. We just talked about it.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
So, and then as you know, I flew out to St. Louis to talk to someone who is, runs a large company, potential distributor. And I think that'll probably go through. They were interested in investing in us, and I think I'm going to probably turn that down. So that was my week.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. My week was, I would say it's a very encouraging week. We have one machine that has been on the floor at Develop for a long time. It's been having some large engineering challenges and team growth, we'll say, baked into it. Company signed off on FAT a little over a week ago, and we have a rigging date to load this thing up on a truck. So this Friday, this machine that's going to pretty much fill a semi-trailer is going to be getting shipped out to the customer, and then we'll be down there installing for site acceptance testing the week of the 16th. So that's been the big thing. And then sales have been very encouraging. The last couple of weeks have been just 2 back-to-back. We've booked more in deals, like deals that we're chasing in the last 2 weeks than we have in the last, say, 2 to 3 months. So I'm feeling very encouraged and optimistic going into 25.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how finishing out one of those big projects. We're just about to finish out that kind of nightmare $2 million project. That final deliverable was almost done Friday, but it's going to be done Monday.
Yeah, that happens. Fridays are always the tough days to actually finish a project on. But yeah, I don't know why that always is.
And I wonder if it would have been done if I was in the office on Thursday, Friday. But
there's a potential of that. Yeah. But I think your team's getting to where they're running really well without you, Michael. So
for sure,
got to just keep trusting them.
All right, sales and marketing.
I kind of hit on that already a little bit, so I'll just kind of keep going into that. Just something broke free in the market for us, or at least from our perspective, on the deal side of what we're putting in the funnel, and then stuff that like we talked about with some potential leads a couple of years ago are actually circling back. They were really big projects at the time, and I think they thought we were just too small. And so now they were asking questions about our growth, seeing where we're at. And now we're looking to put some proposals together for them, which would be potentially some game-changing deals if we can actually get those to the finish.
Is that the market breaking through, or is that you breaking through with one customer? Because one customer can be a game changer for...
It's actually both. Yeah. So there's that one big customer that we're seeing, and then there's other new customers that are coming in on more of a smaller size, or some of them are still big, but it's kind of both. I mean, to give some context, we've averaged about 1.5 to 2 million in deals per week each for the last 2 weeks. So a little over 3 million in deals we've put into our pipeline, which is a record for us.
Yeah. In proposals, I assume, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You'd be massive if you're closing 1-2 million a week.
Yeah, I think our team would be freaking out at that point. Maybe not, as long as we stagger those starts out. Your project's going to now start in 2027. So what about yourself for sales and marketing?
Well, sales and marketing, man, we have so many projects that are in the pipeline that have just kind of been delayed in terms of turnkeys, semi-turnkeys, pallet loaders, or the internal pallet loader, conveyor. And I'm a little bit concerned because, we're in this thing of, okay, well, we should be closing more in high value automation deals. And at the exact same time, I'm like, well, there's enough stuff in the pipeline. If all these close in January, now we're not going to be able to live up to the lead times that we promised, right?
Yeah, I think some of that comes down to your conversion rate, though, too. You got to be honing in on that. It's always that deceiving thing, because if I looked at our deals in the pipeline and we closed them all in the next month, yeah, you can't execute that. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if
absolutely.
you're watching your conversion rate a little bit better these days.
Yeah, and that's I've actually started the Rev 6 of the website,
Okay.
which is a dangerous thing to do, but I've come to the conclusion, I've spent so much time and money on advertising and SEO and SEM, and the reality is, if I go and I really dig into SEMrush, we've climbed the ranks a lot.
You have, yeah. We've looked that up in the past, right on the call.
Yeah, and we're doing great from an SEO perspective. We have the advertising that's working well, but our conversion rate has always been like 0.1%. And to be fair, it's a industrial product. We have this weird mix of turnkeys and just the ability to buy a $1,500 thing.
What are you classifying as conversion rate? Are you saying people that come to your
yeah.
website, people that fill out a form, or people that come to your
I'm
website,
just
fill out
talking
a
about people
form,
who just
and
come
buy?
to the website in general?
Okay.
And part of the problem with that number too is, I know it's higher than that because we split off, like the minute somebody calls the phone or schedules a meeting, then the quotes get created manually. So then, the commission can get paid out to the sales guy. And there's a problem with that because now I don't know what the straight conversion rates really are. And it's a significant volume of sales that's going through HubSpot. So, it's probably 2 or 3 times that, but I still think it should be 5 or 10 times what it is.
Yeah, I think standard website is about 3% is what you should be aiming for.
Yeah, it's I think 2 to 3% for kind of general, like low value consumer e-commerce, but we should be able to hit like 1, right?
I think that's a realistic expectation to set for your team for the coming year.
Yeah, I think so. And at least with the website, it usually is just me and the web developer guy. So it's something I'll do kind of after hours just on my laptop. But I really become convinced like we need better displays of technical data. That I've had countless people ask like, oh, how do I download a step file even though the download is right there? So doing little things like moving it to a section called downloads. That's abundantly obvious as you scroll.
Yeah, Saunders and Pearson do a really good job of breaking down their website. You probably could just, look and see what they've done. They went through a very similar curve, I'm assuming, that you're feeling. So how can you educate yourself from what they learned?
Yeah, and I don't think, I actually took elements from the Saunders website, their little download icons, ours were inspired by theirs. The Pearson website, the way that they displayed like their various products, we took inspiration there. But in this latest overhaul, I'm doing away with a lot of the kind of first rev stuff and just trying to make a lot more technical data and description a lot easier to see, where you just, as you scroll, the information is just there. You don't have to click on something to download. So we stopped getting those questions, and also we just kind of put as much technical data as we can in front of the customer. But I think the reason it took so long was that we launched like 100 SKUs in the span of 18 months, and then obviously we have the files from doing the design work, but going and putting all the specs, especially as we've created multiple design revs of each product, has been kind of its own monolithic task for us to overcome.
Yeah, like I'm looking at your website. Like personally, I love how you do the mega menu. So we're in the process of deploying a mega menu, and complete transparency, I'm giving our web dev team pictures
Yep.
of your stuff because I really like how you execute
Yep.
it. You've got a bold description or bold, you know,
Mhm.
high level description of it. You go in a little bit more detail and you've got an image there. It's awesome. But I go to your page. I don't see, like, I find it interesting that people can't find those downloads. Like,
Well, you're seeing the overhaul right now.
oh, so this is
Yeah.
the new Rev. I was
Yep.
like, I don't like.
Yeah. So you know where
Okay, that
it
makes
was
sense.
like right under the like the add to cart button, and it was this little thing that says like you can still see it where it says downloads. It was like that, but it was like on the right hand side.
I see.
And people's brains would just kind of phase it out. So we've done a ton of stuff just to fix those little things. Like because we're a smaller company, you know, we'd get people just calling on the phone to ask, is it in stock? So we put a little green thing that says in stock, right, on all the products. This is one thing that actually came out of you know, my chat with a guy in St. Louis. He really pushed me on like the power of trade names because he's like, hey, you know, if the other companies come out with spindle grippers, vices, whatever, and I kind of went fully down that rabbit hole on the 4.5-hour plane ride back, and I trade named literally everything. So you know, now our vices are the Auto Vice line. We rebranded the Instant Solenoid kit to the M Code Air. The cheesiest one by far is the grippers. We're calling the Gim grippers.
Okay, I noticed that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
And I kind of hate that name, to be honest, but I at the same time I want people to associate grippers with gimbal, which was
wondering-
why. Yeah.
Did you do that on Instagram? I'm wondering. I'm trying to correlate where I saw that first.
Yeah,
and I was
no,
like, that seems new.
I tried to feel everybody out. Like, is this decision insane to just put the first half of my last name in front of the word gripper? But people liked it. I got a lot of positive feedback on that.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. The 2-op palette is now the Grip Flip Grip palette, which I think is actually far more descriptive to what it does. You know, we've renamed the bypass block system for the bypass here to FlowLink. So just lots and lots of effort and thought in terms of trade names to try to make things a little more obvious and get a little bit better brand association with each one of our products.
So you did most of this website, or did you have your guy in India?
So what I do, it's kind of that 10-80-10 thing. I create PowerPoints where I just like screenshot and drag boxes around, and I create what I want it to look like, and then I just send him the PowerPoint. And then, you know, we go and make a lot of little fixes. You know, there's a link that goes the wrong place or something that doesn't work right. And we do that, and, you know, I pay the guy $20 an hour, and the amount he works varies depending on how many PowerPoints I send him. But, you know, it's probably between 10 and 100 hours a month in general.
Yeah, I mean, and this was a big overhaul that you did there.
Yeah.
So I mean, and at that price, yeah, that's super efficient.
Yeah. And man, I just want to find an SEO, SEM guy who is as cost effective as Mode, because he is by far, like, bar none, other than me, like our most value per dollar, you know, person who's kind of working here.
Yeah, can you send me
Yeah.
a link after this to?
Yeah.
I want to see if he does WordPress sites,
Yeah, for sure.
because yeah, I like where your website's going. Okay.
Yeah, and what I've really found with, you know, once you find like a good Upwork or a consultant, the more clear that you can make exactly what you want, the better. And where we've really struggled is when we can't articulate exactly what we want because we don't know what we don't know.
I think that's any project in general.
Yeah.
You're either gonna have the pain of having to do it multiple times because you don't know what you don't know, so you just have to figure it out, or you have to be able to scope it out of the gate. So that's part of the game. That's R&D at its finest right there.
Yep. But
We
yeah,
always-
I mean, we just had tons of little things like, you know, you'd have to download the model of the device, and we didn't, you know, you could, on the web page, you could see how much stroke it had, but it wasn't like abundantly clear. So going and putting that in both the technical document and in its own little table with its own line have just made it so much easier to digest.
Yeah, the website looks great, Michael. I thought your website was pretty good prior, and so now seeing how easy it is when I go to a product, I'm curious to talk in another month here and see if you actually see that conversion number go up.
Oh, I've already seen it go up 50%.
You have
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah, but our conversion was 0.1. Now it's 0.15. You know, it's still bad. It's still a bad number. But
That's still huge. That's straight revenue right there, though. That's huge.
yeah, for sure. And there's also, Yeah, there's definitely confounding factors. Like we're spending a lot more on advertising now to try to
Okay.
get the kind of random flow through better. So there's likely a higher quantity of quality click throughs than there was prior.
Where are you spending your dollars on ads?
Oh, that's a challenge. We used to spend probably 20 grand a month on PPC, and it very early on we would just pour it into Facebook, Meta, Instagram, and we would just see it come back 3-4x ROAS. After the whole Apple issue, that plummeted. We redid all of our advertising and we got it back up. But the problem now has been that we just haven't gotten around to creating good ad creative. One of the things you can't control with Meta is the number of times that someone sees your ad. So I've seen our own ad 200 times, and it's like the minute that you've seen an ad, you just click it, or not, you click the next button, right? So
Or the button to stop showing me this thing because I've seen it 4 times today.
Yep. So we just need to make fresh ad creative to even see what Meta's conversion is. Google works really well, but it can be expensive to pay for clicks. And, at the end of the day, that's why I decided, okay, I'm going to pull back. Well, we pushed a little harder on the advertising, but, not go back to where we were and try to get the conversion rate up once someone's on the site.
I mean, you're spending more per month than we would ever do in a year, to give some context there.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually, I know the number. I was looking at our P&L for last year. We spent under $15,000 in ads for the entire year, and that includes LinkedIn ads for when we were doing job postings.
Gotcha.
So that was any ad spend that we were using to get in front of people last year. So it's definitely a different skew, but we're starting to get back into the ads game, and that's why I was asking, because now that our website's really refined in to where we wanted, we're looking, all right, there's LinkedIn for our customers is potentially a big opportunity. We've used Google in the past, and that's yielded results. Bing's also running a bunch of promotions, so we're like, oh, do we just run the same things that we're going to run on Google on Bing to see if there's a different play
I
there?
think Bing is probably where it's at for our industry. And the reason is the demographic skews a lot older. And we've never gotten around to integrating with Bing or doing Bing ads. But, even looking at something like 15% of search results are from Bing.
Yeah, that's roughly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's probably an awesome spot to target that we haven't gotten around to.
Yeah. So our strategy is we're going to split all the buckets and do all of them in January, but we're going to spend limited. We're going to do $500 per bucket and then review the data. I realize that's a small spend, but just try and see where stuff trends from.
Do you want my honest feedback there?
Yeah, go for it.
I think you can't even get any data at all from $500.
So in the past, we've closed $250,000 deals from less than $1,000 spent on Google.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, yeah.
I think the other thing is it's I want to see what kind of conversions we get. I'm less concerned about getting sales, so I'm looking at it different on that side. Our data is a little bit different there. Otherwise, I would typically agree, because say you spend $500, your average click is going to be 50 people are going to end up filling something out at the end of the day at best.
Right. No, it depends on the channel.
Clicking. Yeah.
But it can also, so, okay, we got $1 million sale out of $500. So it's like, okay, we got a 2000x ROAS or whatever, 200x. And it's like, well, did we, or was that a fluke? Because if I multiplied that out by, to $5,000 or $50,000, what is the ROAS then? Right.
So do you think it makes more sense then to take the entire 2,000, put it in Google and test just one? Or should we just increase our budget across all of them?
$1,500 is the minimum to where you can get a little bit of good data.
Okay. Has that changed? Because I used to run a lot of ads in if I go back to 2020,
it's changed a lot.
When I ran more ads personally, and I could get a lot of data from a couple $100.
The issue is if you don't spend enough, the ads won't even show up at the same rate. So we dropped our ad spend with Google to $1,500 a month for a while when we were super busy. And when we did that, a lot of our ads stopped showing entirely because of limited budget.
Well, I see what you're saying.
So basically the Google algorithm is saying, okay, well, there's not enough money here to determine how efficacious this ad is. So I'm just not going to show it. I'm going to show a competing ad that goes after the same word set.
I see.
Yeah. And Meta does the same thing. LinkedIn doesn't really do that. But the problem is we've never seen any conversion at all inorganically out of LinkedIn.
I haven't seen a lot out of LinkedIn. I'm not overly optimistic about it, but our marketing agency wants to give it a shot. Insight to that, we had some issues on their side of ads this year. The reason we haven't spent any money on ads, let's say in the last 4 months, was, and maybe I covered this in a previous podcast, did an audit on their execution of ads. To come to find out that we were not getting what we were paying for. We had spent roughly $20,000 with them. And to give you an idea, after a solid debate, like 80% of that's going back as a credit towards us, because they then internally did an audit and they gave themselves, I think it was like a 46% score of quality of their internal team. And they're like, yeah, this is a problem. So I give them a lot of credit. We pointed out the problem. They stepped up. They're correcting it now on their dime. So thankfully we didn't have to terminate them, because when we brought it to their attention, they owned it. They didn't try and skate out of it.
Well, speaking of SEO marketing firms, do you want to hear the story?
I want to hear your story. So that's probably a great lead in. Mine stepped up. Yours apparently didn't.
Okay. So, we have this marketing firm. We pay them like, $3,000 a month. It's not a lot, but we don't expect a lot of work out of them. And basically they were supposed to, keep Google Search Console, find problems, find, little SEO optimization things, do a couple backlinks, every month. And I was doing this website overhaul, just totally separate from the SEO firm. And I found out Google Search Console was disconnected. And I was like, that's interesting, because that's one of the main places that they should be monitoring our performance and looking for issues. It's like, and I reconnected it and now I'm seeing issues. These should have been brought up. And I'm like, okay, this is going to,
Do you not get like a weekly or monthly report?
I get a monthly report, right?
Was there a report showing there was no issues?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to audit this. And then I audit it and I started looking at all the links. And yeah, there was some, they're paying for backlinks, but a lot of them pretty low authority score, pretty toxic.
Which actually can work against you in your authority score.
So I look at that and I email them. We had a 6-month contract. It just ended, right? Our billing cycle starts on the 4th. So I email them, it's the 1st. And I say, hey, I want to pause, while I look into things and look at our options. I gave them some excuse about like, cash flow's tight, which it wasn't, but it is what it is. Because I wanted to investigate and see what happens. And then not even 2 hours later, I get an alert from Amex, $3,000 has been billed from this company. So I email that, or I get an email back from them, after I asked them to pause, like, oh, you're already paid through December. and then we'll pause in January. So I email back, that's strange. HubSpot shows that, an hour and a half after you open this email, you charged my credit card through our full monthly amount 3 days early from the billing cycle. And, I'm like, please refund this. And then, he offers to send me a check less the credit card fees. So, I go and I review our contract and I'm looking at this. And I'm like, this is shady. So, I email him. I give him an opportunity to save face and give us a refund. I'm like, no, you need to refund the full amount. And he gives me some BS about how part of it is from the backlinks from November. And I review our contract, and all the backlinks are supposed to be, one for one, out-of-pocket expenses. I know it's normal to charge margin. I've never really bothered to investigate it because I trusted they were spending $200 and charging us $300. But now I was asking questions, right?
It's once that trust is broken, and then that snowball just starts. You find things that really might not have been too big of a deal because they might have just worked through them, but you find them all at that point. It's a slippery slope.
And this guy just refused to like refund our credit card, and then he wanted to refund $2,000 and then $2,500, and then I was like, I'm just gonna do a credit card chargeback. Like I have proof that you guys are like acting fraudulent, and I emailed him back, and I'm like, you did something shady. I gave you an opportunity to save face and walk it back, and you doubled down. You're fired. and that was kind of where we left that SEO firm.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you could have spent more time screwing around with it, but you got to where it was going anyways.
And what was crazy was when I audited all of our backlinks, it was all the articles that I wrote. like almost none of it had come from this SEO firm that we dumped, $35,000 into over the last 6 months.
Yeah. So are they not creating any articles or pieces for you?
Well, so basically we were like paying them a retainer. There was a lot of work for them up front of fixing, identifying and fixing all the issues. Like, okay, the first month and a half, I get it. And I understand like they're going to probably lose money, and that's why you put it on a 6-month contract. If you look at it on a month-for-month basis. But then I had a conversation with them of, hey, we want you to write articles. And they're like, okay, that's going to be extra. And I told them, yep, like bill us for it. And then let's add paid backlinks, bill us for it. They did the backlinks, but they just never did the articles and just didn't charge us for them. And I was kind of like, hey, like where are they? So, they basically said, oh, we can't do this. So I started writing the articles, and that's where a lot of our SEO climb came from. And it seems like, past the second or third month, they just kind of stopped doing anything other than a couple, kind of, okay, here's a 15 authority score random blog, and they're just going to copy and paste one of our blogs on our site and just link to us.
That's interesting because like for our SEO company, we audit like competitors. We look at keywords that we want to be targeting based on pages we're on, and then we'll create pieces around those. So this last year's been insane for SEO from us. We've averaged over 25,000 words on our website per month. Now, basically, I was reading a book every month. Thankfully, December, like we had slowly with our SEO company, we had slowly gotten further and further behind. And so we were currently trying to get tasks done from September, done in December. And I was like, can we just not pay in December and allow you guys to catch up? And thankfully, like, yes, we really like that idea because we actually shut down for the week of Christmas, and we'd love to just catch up because we're sick of being behind too. I was like, perfect. So this month has been a lot less reading for me, which has been really nice to focus on more on sales too.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that too. Of when I really dug into the SEO, there were so many like low hanging fruit keywords that we were ranking for, like fingers for air grippers. Was the keyword difficulty was 2, and we ranked number 4 on it, and something like 10% of our traffic came from. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna write an article for fingers for air grippers,
and
just random niche keywords.
Yeah. And that's what we've seen is the better way to focus on keywords too, is those smaller niche ones rather than like try and get automation as a keyword or robotics. Like, all right, focus on some drive down there, robotics with or stuff like that.
Yeah. But, I definitely need to find a new firm because I can write articles every once in a while, but I don't have the consistency, and then I'll focus on something else.
Yeah. I'd be more than willing to introduce you to our firm. They do ads as well if you're interested in that.
Yeah, no, I'm open to anyone right now.
Yeah. I've been pretty happy. I mean, there was audits where there was issues, but they corrected them. That's the big thing. I always expect there to be
That's any
challenge.
vendor. Like everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah,
everybody's wrong. And every vendor doesn't perform for a couple of months, but it's when they just pretend. They just start gaslighting you about it. That's where the trouble starts.
Exactly. So every time we've called them out on it, they owned it and they corrected it. And I'd say beyond correcting it because they see the value in long-term relationships, not just making easy money for 6 months.
Well, do you want to move on to engineering R&D?
Sounds good to me. We've been on sales and marketing for a while. What happened in the engineering and R&D for you this week?
Well, not much. I guess one thing, I mean, we've been working on the internal pallet loader. We're adding a door to it. I'm kind of the R&D center, and I've kind of been, I was out for 2 days and focused on the consulting projects. So yeah, we're adding an auto door there. We're refining our auto door designs. We've had for a while a double auto door that goes in front of a CNC machine, but it's like not even on our website. It needs a little bit of design refinement, and we sold a round of those. So we're going to go and really fix up any of the little issues with the auto door.
What's a round? What do you classify?
A $12,000 PO for a couple of auto doors. So we just want to really clean it up and get it that last kind of 5% really nice.
The details, because those matter to us.
Yeah. And then we'll use that as an opportunity to put it on our website. Clean up the CAD models and the downloads and the technical data, and see if we can start moving more auto doors, because that's one of the the segments of our products that we don't move a big volume of because I think our technical information isn't good enough. But yeah, a little bit of
Go over the
CLS,
technical.
R&D.
What's the technical? What do you mean by the technical documentation isn't good enough?
Well, there's a lot of places where, like configurators are just such an awesome tool. And, of course, the investment of making them is a pain, but where it's like, I have this machine and I want an auto door on the front or the left or the right. And it just links up with here are compatible products. Or even we don't have a compatible product.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that'll be huge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of places like, you went to our website just now and said, oh, this looks great. What you're not seeing is I spent the 4 hours on the plane coming up with rewriting every product description because it used to be like, here's half a paragraph. And with a technical product where you need to know, a small detail on whether it can implement with your system, that becomes a problem.
I find it impressive that you can work on a plane. I've always struggled with that.
Normally I can't.
Like planes, cars, like I get this wicked motion sickness and then like this weird vertigo or headache, and it's just like bad deal for me. So I'd love to be able to optimize that time, but I'm just like,
normally I'm just like you, not the motion sickness, but normally I just fall asleep. I'll take melatonin before a flight because I like the teleportation feeling.
Okay.
But, it was too early in the day and I couldn't sleep, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna push this trade name thing, and then trade nameized. I don't know. That's a bad hyphen, but created trade names for like all of our products. And then, when I landed, did some of the USPTO search and threw out the ones that, realistically either had bad SEO or were already, trademarked.
What does it typically cost for you to go through a trademark on stuff like that? 'Cause we're like $200 to $500 what I'll pay our agency typically.
Yeah. So basically, we have kind of a junior level patent attorney that we just like shotgun provisionals with. And because of the length of time we've been selling a lot of our products, none of like the patents are finalized yet. There's I don't know 3 or 4 in conversions and a whole bunch of provisionals. To do the little TM, you don't have to do anything. You just put it there, right? So I don't actually know the answer because this is the first time that we've
You have to file for a trademark.
well, that's the little R. The TM just says that you're basically declaring that you own it. It doesn't actually mean anything.
I never knew you could just do that.
Yeah. So all the TM means, and if I'm horribly wrong and just violating trademark, right? TM meaning, let's see.
Man,
the TM symbol can be used regardless of whether a trademark is registered. So it's just saying, hey, I'm laying claim to this. As opposed to, yeah.
I
You
never
just
knew
put a
that.
little TM there. Now,
I'm gonna TM everything.
yeah, and the little R says, okay, we applied for the trademark or the word mark or the logo mark or whatever, and we actually received it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. That's good to know. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. So, now we have all the little obnoxious TMs. But, if you don't use a trademark or a word mark or whatever for a long enough time, you actually cease to have rights to it.
Makes sense. I mean, that's otherwise people would just go on Google and build a website list of trademarks. So then when somebody wanted to use it, they could sell it. I mean, that's what I would do if I had nothing else to do, I guess.
Yeah, it's already what happens with domains, which is a nightmare.
Well, it's crazy. Yeah, domains. Well,
engineering R&D for you?
Yeah. It's been a lot of processes. So it's, like I said, it's been getting that one machine off the floor. But what's been really cool on the engineering side is seeing our team changing the approach by which we build machines so we can increase speed. We've got this, long-term objective of how do we build design and build. So from time that the SOW signed, when we start the project, how do we go from there to machine getting shipped to the customer in under 6 months has been the big goal. And we're talking $500,000 to $2 million projects. That's our goal. We understand that that's going to take some time to get there, but it's been really cool to see the way that people are working at running more things in parallel in departments. So as stuff comes together, it just moves faster. So the one thing I saw this week is we have a machine that parts have been showing up for, mechanicals getting ready to go to build. Software is going to need stuff as soon as the machine's built. So to expedite some of that schedule, the electrical cabinet got built on that machine this week. So then the software team can lay the stuff out on a bench to make sure that the comms are working. So when everything gets built, there's no comms issues for that machine. So then all they're doing then is writing the code for the machine to run, which is something we've never done. We've talked about it. and that'll save us a lot of time because of parallel tasks. That's a huge engineering win, I'd say, on that R&D side.
It's a dangerous game. I can say from experience, and when it works, you feel like a genius.
What do you mean by that? Why is it a dangerous game?
Well, I guess I might be approaching that more from, doing a lot of the R&D we do is kind of like blue sky, build something that has never existed before. But man, when you write, or create an HMI, or you program a PLC for a thing that doesn't exist, if you've done it 100 times before, awesome. Like I could probably design a fresh gripper in an hour and it would work. But I guess it depends on how many times you've gone through the process.
That's a really good point to say. So this has been something that there's just convergence that's happening. So we started building our HMI processes about 2 years ago, where everything was going to be modular. We could then leverage that to drag them around and build the next. So job statuses and the way that every machine that develop builds is going to be remaining the same or very similar. The way then your modules, or what's unique to your machine, so say you've got drills on your machine, something that's torquing something down, something that's picking and placing like a robot, those are different modules, but we drag them and drop them into our HMI. What we're talking about is we've defined what this machine is going to be. For this application, we're talking about a machine that's going to be driving nuts down to a specific torque. So rotary table's got to turn, operator loads the product in there, we turn back around and drive the nut runner to specified torque. We've never worked with this nut runner. We've never worked with this rotary stage. So we don't need the entire mechanical system to verify the comms. So the team now has the electrical cabinet so they can test out those comms on those unknowns. So then when we go to the mechanical state, they're not trying to debug that. They're only debugging the mechanical issues at that point.
Gotcha.
Does that help explain
No, yeah,
it where
you're
it's
far
less
enough
of a
along.
risk?
And I think part of that is because whenever we've done R&D, it's been Michael has some crazy idea and he just throws himself at it.
Yeah, our R&D is definitely becoming less wild and crazy, let's say. And I think that's been a big cultural shift for our team, has been that really the first time we R&D something, since we retain IP on machines we build, the first machine we build, rather than getting so clever or like trying to solve the future needs, we're really just prototyping and solving that exact customer's needs, and then we'll refine there later. So our R&D is really reduced, which means that we can move faster has been our main goal of that as a company, because we couldn't hit those 6-month goal dates any other way.
I guess I think of that more as engineering than R&D, because it's a linear process, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think of R&D as like, here's the thing we need to achieve. We don't know how the hell we're going to do it.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. Really develops an engineering company. At the end of the day, we do 80% engineering, 20% R&D, or maybe even less than that in R&D. So new machines are turning into engineering because
Which
it's
is what you
becoming
want.
a
Yeah.
process. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a process.
even our gripper stuff is turning into engineering, because it's like, okay, we want to hire a force gripper, or we want to improve the fingers. It's not a, how do we build a spindle gripper, right?
Exactly.
Whereas, the first time we do like the pallet loader, like that's R&D, where it's like, okay, let's see if this works. And, luckily it did. You want to move on to company-wide updates, improvements?
Sure. That's what I was pulling up here a little while back, was literally our weekly meetings, what the team put down as our processes that changed. The big one was we had a good meeting, all the people that are leading projects. So right now we've got, I believe, 5 projects running in parallel. And that means that there's 5 leads that have to communicate and not demand resources, but it comes down to debates at the end of the day. So the big shift, as we've talked about on the podcast previously, is changing what are the priorities of the business. Typically that's revolving around the projects that are in the pipeline. But the PM all of us came together of how we actually going to manage these now that the workload of this is getting larger and larger, and managing the overlapping Gants. So then the way that team members are communicating on tasks that are done, and the way that the project leads communicating then to the person that's managing all the master Gants, if you will, and the overlapped resources, so that we can get visibility from 2 to 3 months, 2 weeks to 3 months is what we've said. And then the project lead is responsible from today to 2 weeks. And then there's that squishy area from the 2 weeks to 3 months where we're looking out. So that's changing that process. So it was very well stated to the team. I think we had all been kind of on the same page. We just hadn't said it. So
Yeah.
that was a good process to. I went upstairs the day after we had that meeting, and the people that were in that meeting made an awesome visual for the rest of the team to see of the expectations, and it was just really cool to see that.
That was cool. Yeah.
So I think we have dental and vision now options is another company announcement that we put up there. And then what else did we really have? Shoot, crazy. I think one thing that was really exciting for me to see is the team's been changing the way we actually just clean up at the end of the day, because I have so many impromptu sales calls where people just want to come in and it's like, hey, I want to see that machine you said's on your floor. It's like, okay, I can show you. And the team's gotten so good at like end of day, because a lot of these, it ends up people want to come in at like 4 o'clock on their way home or something. Most people have left at that point. The team is now knolling all their stuff that's in WIP. So like when I walk around there, it's like, all right, somebody was assembling a conveyor, but then all the sheet metal parts that they're going to be working on tomorrow are all laid out with their tools right next to them. And it's just really cool to see that when I walk around and give a tour, because it shows like some level of OCD and attention to detail that we have. And it never fails that we get a comment on that when I'm giving that tour. Like, is this what it's always like? Or did you stage this? It's like, this is our new culture. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I aspire for that because, our shop, especially like our production, I call it our production facility, but it's like where our clean machines are. And we have the R&D stuff. Like, it looks clean, but it's so hard to find where something is, because we moved into the building, starting in February. I don't think we really got into like March, April. And, buying the second sets of tools, building out all of the systems, especially with all of the, the hecticness has been difficult. So everything, looks clean on the surface, and then you dig a little deeper and it's like, how do I find this size of parallel?
Something that the team did that I thought was really clever is we had all these tools that we had either created redundancies on or had just bought an abundance of tools because that's what we need throughout an entire project. But they kind of did an 80-20 rule on our tools. We have this little Mac toolbox and another smallish orange toolbox cabinet. And they went, all right, these things are packed. There's stuff stacked on top of each other. What are the 20% tools we use all the time? They cleaned out the toolboxes down to those. And then on the lev rack that we have, which is our like, call it cold storage or stuff that's easy to get into, high density storage, they took an entire rack of that and put all of our tools there that were that other kind of 80%. And now you can see those easier. So when you walk up there, you just look, all right, I'm looking for this. And you could scan the entire shelf. Like, even for me, because I'm out there so much less, I actually helped for a couple half days here in the last couple weeks just to kind of help see the pains that the team's feeling. That made it so much easier for me, because I don't know if I would have found tools otherwise. Like,
yeah, that's one thing that's funny with me is like with CNC machines is I used to be able to do all the buttons, do all the things, and now I can write like a complex macro or build something relatively advanced to interface with the machine, but like actually just running a one-off part is like
torture.
It's not even torture. It's just like there's this huge learning curve because I haven't done that thing for 2 years.
What's interesting is then all of a sudden that becomes a liability or a risk to the company, because you're like a junior level person getting trained at that point, which
is just not what we want.
Yeah, that's how you cook $5,000 in a minute.
Well, for me, there's a couple things I've been thinking about. Obviously, the idea, a lot of my head has been at, okay, how do I get our conversion rate up in terms of e-commerce? And of course, it's a little misleading given that we have these multiple sales channels. But the other thing that's really been on my mind is, wow, our machine utilization is just terrible. And in a good way. So we had kind of the three businesses of, okay, here's the contract manufacturing, here's the engineering consulting, and here's the automation business. And, we pretty much retired the contract manufacturing business. And then, we are still doing a little bit of the consulting. And, the automation business has grown, so that's still made sense. So we haven't really contracted in size. But I've started to really think, wow, I have, $1.5 million of equipment on the floor. And I'm getting like so little value out of it. And, a lot of it is like we needed that machine to, do XYZ or to build a gripper for this application. or to build a conveyor loading system for a 5-axis. But the reality of the throughput of the parts that we make, it's just not that high. But between we've even gone to the extent of saying, hey, building production parts isn't what we're awesome at. What we're awesome at is doing the engineering, putting the systems together, testing, quality control, cycle testing, and building the next gripper to where we said, okay, we're just not a job shop, but now my equipment utilization is so incredibly low.
Is this your way of saying you're selling machines?
Well, so one thing I thought a lot about is like, well, what if there were a machine shop here? But like the caveat there is just, I wouldn't want to run it.
Yeah, you gave me a lot of shit when I was talking about ramping up some of our machining.
I know.
It's so attractive though. It makes a lot of sense because you get other efficiencies in your other parts of your business. It just it needs to be ran a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I think about the two examples that come to mind. Our 5-axis does this. They have all of their internal production, and then they do contract manufacturing out of the same facility. And then I know Henry Holsters also does this. And it's funny because I've been moving away from this train of thought of, okay, maybe we can have some form of contract manufacturing. And really where my head is going at is like, I am interested in finding that person that can almost run a shop in parallel and grow that shop slowly. Like, we don't need it to cash flow immediately. And I don't know if that is, another business that there's a guy who used to work for me who does excellent work. So shout out to Ty Neff. But I'm pushing a little bit on like, hey, can we get you to move into the spare space in our facility and run a machine shop in parallel using, our equipment, your equipment, whatever, and just, bill hourly to where I almost become like, okay, I can get $30 an hour of value out of this machine time that otherwise wouldn't have been billed for at all.
Well, that's interesting. So you're like, use our equipment and I'll lease it to you. Is your
well, he used to work for us for like 3 days a week while running his shop on the side.
Yeah. I remember the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to run that business, but I want to monetize the equipment. So there's questions. How do I do that? Do I go and basically hire a shop foreman and try to build out that business in parallel? The attractive thing about just bringing someone else in and having it be another business is that I don't have to care about contract manufacturing. I just have to worry about making sure it monetizes wear and tear on the machines, making sure there's not like clashes with space and whatnot.
Okay, so if you didn't have the equipment, how much would you spend with somebody to just contract it out? The parts that you'd need in a year. Like, do
that's
you
the
know
thing
that?
is we have the equipment. We're already contracting out a significant portion of our parts.
In theory, though, so those machines, like say you didn't own them, but you still needed parts made on those types of machines. Do you have any idea how much you would spend?
So I guess, what do you mean? Like,
so in theory, if you sold the machines, so if you sold 80% of your machines went down to just what you need for your R&D and QC, let's say that's $1 million. You have 1.5. I'm just playing out a hypothetical here. We'll see where it goes is what I'm really saying here. You now have $1.5 million, but you sold $1 million worth of equipment. If you put $1 million of cash on top of your business, does that have more value to growing your business by then using, say, 20%, because it might be $200,000 you're spending now to contract those out? So now you're at a net gain of $800,000 in liquidity to grow your business, to spend on marketing, spend on team members to do R&D and engineering, hire another salesperson. Can you actually grow your business faster that way?
Well, one of the complications is we only own half the equipment outright. So then we have $10,000 a month of loans.
Understood.
And the part of the challenge is we bought most of this machinery when we had no idea like the automation business was going to be a thing, right? And we bought one piece of equipment just saying, hey, we need a BT30 magazine style tool changer machine just to do the R&D. So, part of the challenge is like, okay, well, if we don't have a water jet, we just can't make a lot of big parts. We just couldn't make our conveyor or something.
Yeah, so keep the water jet.
But then there's the issue is like, okay, we need a 5-axis machine. We need a machine with a side mount tool changer, and we need a BT30 with a magazine style tool changer. So then, the only machine that really becomes not particularly useful is our gantry mill. So it's like, okay, well, maybe we sell off that one, but then you're paying off the loan anyways, and then minus depreciation, maybe it's only, I don't know, 70 to 100 grand of actual liquidity.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it.
So that kind of just lends the question of, okay, well, if we could just make this equipment monetize, but I was only having to worry about the scheduling and trying to figure out, or and making the machine cash flow in some way, then that becomes very attractive.
What gantry do you have?
We have a GR510. It's like the
Is that where it's a fifth axis on the gantry?
no, it's not. It's like the cheapest gantry mill you can buy that can like machine stainless,
Okay, interesting.
and it's still 300.
And you'd only get $70K for that thing?
Well, no, but I mean, we would have to pay back the loan.
I see what you're saying. What's
Right,
it worth
so-
today then?
I have no idea, and I'm just kind of spitballing numbers of how much, I'm guessing we have, I don't know, 100 grand of equity in the machine, maybe a little more, and then you're going to get 60 to 70% on the used market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So,
Okay.
and then we have the water jet, and that was like when we were doing contract manufacturing, it was like the core of that business, because man, the water jets are just they're messy and they're terrible and they're frustrating with maintenance, but they're just so easy to make money with.
Is there a value if you play this out then being able to have everything back in one location? Because that's one thing that I've heard is a pain. You're small. We're both small businesses. Having two locations is a bit of a no-no.
I mean, it's like a 2-minute walk, right?
Okay, but yes.
It's still
How
enough
much you
to
pay? What's your lease for both spaces?
I think we pay 14,000 a month
Per location or total?
total.
So $7K per location. That machine payments, you could have potentially, you might be creating $125,000+ in annual liquidity within your business by getting rid of that gantry along with freeing that up.
Yeah, but the problem is the water jet, because
You need that.
Well, we need it, and if you don't have it in a separate building or in a separate location, then it just ruins everything.
Even if you put like a wall up around it or anything.
Well, you can put a wall up around it, but then you get into, okay, we wouldn't have the electricity to run the machine simultaneously because we only have 200-300 amps per unit. So then you get into power requirements, which it tends to be in kind of industrial flex space in SoCal, the big issue.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So
we've got monster power over here. We're
Yeah.
like, we just put a 480 3-phase 100 amp in as overkill because we need I think it was 15 of those amps for the Fanuc robot that we just landed and are powering up. But there's a big project that we're in the running for the bid on, and it's like, well, that's what we're going to need for power, and it's only going to cost an extra $500 to run all that power right now. So let's just drop it in. So yeah, we definitely don't have any power shortages.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, well, and we're on 5-year leases, and each of the buildings had 100 grand of electrical work over the years put into it. So there's a lot of friction to changing things like the location, or even like moving the water jet. It means you're flying out a couple techs from Omax, and that turns into a $15,000 expense before you've even done the electric.
Okay. Yeah. It's always it's a bigger equation than you always think. So,
Yeah, it's not like moving a VF2 with those two machines. It's
I've never moved a water jet. I've worked with them. I know they're a big pain in the butt, but yeah, I've never.
So, I mean, that's really been on my mind. The conversion thing has been on my mind. And then, I mean, I've generally been thinking a little bit more and pushing on like, okay, we need to figure out, we need to get, a good bank, whether it's, Chase, or maybe we just end up moving banks to get an actual line of credit sorted out. And, some other little, boring admin things.
Oh yeah. Well, sometimes those boring admin things are very critical to your business's health. So I wouldn't discredit them at all.
So yeah, that's been the company-wide updates improvements for me.
Awesome. Sounds like a good swing of I guess it's been a couple of weeks since we really technically chatted. So good deal.
I do want to steal one more thing. I know we said we would stick to the structure, but I wanted to just add this.
Okay.
And I've stolen this before from Dylan. So if you haven't listened to Within Tolerance, I mean, let's be honest, if you're listening to our smaller podcast, you probably listened to Within Tolerance. But one of my favorite questions from him is, what are you researching this week?
Ooh, what are you researching this week? I should actually just pull up my Google here. I'll let you go first while I do that.
Well, mine, obviously the trade name thing. And I was, like throwing names at my fiance of like, oh, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think of this? And she really cringed at the gim grippers, but I was like, I'm doing it anyways. But I was coming up with, I'm trying to come up with some trade names for our line of rotor unions, and Priscilla, my fiance, just told me, why don't you just like tell ChatGPT to give you like a list of 100 trade names?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, lo and behold, I do that, and you got to prompt it and do some work, but man, I got to really learn how to use AI for those little tasks like that more effectively.
That's AI's come a long way for those simple like brainstorming. Like we'll do it for laying out SEO stuff and getting to ideas that way. We found that very powerful.
Yeah, and you have especially with a technical product or whatever, you have to be careful with the dangers of the hallucinations. With SEO, you have to be careful that it's not detected as some AI generated content.
What's danger of hallucinations?
Well, so all language learning models are kind of infamous for just making stuff up on the fly. So it won't know the answer and it'll be like, okay, I'm just going to make something up.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So we've even, one place I did use ChatGPT was before we got our turnkey consultant who writes a lot of our macros, and he's awesome. But before we were sending a lot of this complex stuff to him, when I was still involved in some of the macro writing, I would use ChatGPT and tell it to like come up with an equation that does this that's written in G code, and it would just like randomly write it in Python, right? And be like, no, that's Python, that's not G code. And then it would randomly like put one line in Python or something, and then sometimes you would tell it, hey, that's like not G code, this isn't going to work, and be like, yes, it does work, and then it feeds you the same code.
Yeah, just drop it in the machine and see what happens.
So you can end up arguing with it. Sometimes it'll just make stuff up, where it'll just pull information from wherever or combine things that are just totally different industries or sectors. So stuff like that can happen, and especially as you get more niched in. The smaller the product niche, the less information there is online, the more likely it is to hallucinate.
Okay.
And then there's the SEO danger too of AI. That's
where we like it for outlining and getting creative ideas, but then having the human like, all right, audit this. Is this a good way to write this article? Is a human going to enjoy this flow? Yes. Okay, start building it out. Yeah, leveraging it correctly makes a lot of sense.
Do you mind like don't have to give me an exact number, but how much do you spend on like SEO, SEM, marketing? Combined monthly?
I'll give you the exact number. Let me pull up and give you context to what they all do on a monthly basis. So I'm going to pull up what they call our campaign dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
So the campaign dashboard, let me drag it over here. The campaign dashboard covers everything we're going to be doing on a monthly basis, and then I can roll back and see what we've done over the last month. So, and they also look at it on quarterly basis. So they do audits every quarter on your SEO based on things we accomplished and goals that we had set, and then create a new set of objectives for the following quarter. So they get big goals so they can kind of run by themselves, and then we have our weekly meetings. I'm getting to your question here. What it comes down to is we spend $11,000 a month with them.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to be ramping that down because we had seen this thing where we were falling behind on our marketing based on the growth of our team. And so we'll probably scale that back to like 6 to 7 next year. It was just our website wasn't where we needed it to be, right. And we needed to get it up to snuff on a lot of our knowledge bases, blogs, and just web pages in general. What that breaks down to is they break it into actions. So we get 18 actions for that cost, and depending upon your package. So like we looked at, they have that good, better, best model. You can spend that price, or you can spend significantly more per action if you have a smaller plan. With that, they do knowledge base creation. They're creating 3 pieces is what they're looking for in January. They're then gonna also create, knowledge bases are educational evergreen content that'll be on our website. Blogs are content that might be time-based or will go stale and will eventually just go off the website. They're going to be creating 3 of those. So that equates to right there roughly 12,000 words, let's say, if not more, that they're going to be putting on our website. Then there's SEO copywriting, where they'll typically go through like a web page for like, all right, we need to boost this, bring up some performance. They're classifying that as like 1,200 words just to audit and do that stuff. That's one action. We have email marketing through HubSpot, where they're starting to build out our sequences and automating email sends. A lot of that's we just started doing that, as you're aware, over the last 3 months here. So that's going to start tapering off as they've told us. But we're spending about 2 actions a month right now to get, we had the migration first. We then had our deal pipeline automation so we could see and get those reports. Then there's dev web updates. This is the one where I'm interested because I feel like that's a little overpriced. We get 2 actions, and I always feel like it's a little light, but they perform so well in the other areas that I just haven't dug into that one too far yet. And then there's a series of other like page boosts and management of the campaign to get us to 18 total actions. There was PPC in the past. They're now covering those. So we've got like 20 actions technically for the next 3 months now. That pretty much covers it. And then link building is another one I'm seeing here.
Yeah. But yeah, the SEO, SEM is a very annoying game that you have to play.
Yeah. Did that answer your question, or too many details,
it did.
lost
Definitely
focus?
A sanity check. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
And I think candidly, I'll probably be stubborn and try to find, like a miracle worker, like our Shopify guy.
I would recommend our agency. They offer some packages at like $6,000, and that's probably what we're going to taper down to when this contract comes to close in May of next year. I think we're going to really cut our actions in half because we don't need it. We had a lot of work to get done, and it's tapering off on that now. Now it's maintenance.
Yeah. What's your authority score, like in 20s?
I haven't looked at it in a while. Last time I think we were like 15 or 18. I'll pull it up. SEO dashboard. We're an authority score of 18. So, but if you go back to May, we were a 9.
Yeah, we're a 9. That's a big jump. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was May or June we were a 9. I think prior to that, like at the beginning, a year ago, we were at like a 7. So we went from basically a 7 to an 18 in 12 months.
Yeah. Which is possible. It's just a lot of work. Do you guys do paid backlinks at all or no?
We haven't yet.
No?
We've gotten organic backlinks is what we've been picking up, but we don't have a lot of backlinks yet, as you can probably see on there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I'm starting to take a lot more seriously. And that's one thing our SEO firm was supposed to do. But there's a lot of places, like Modern Machine Shop, MTD CNC, Practical Machinist, where you can kind of pay for, sponsored host content, which really it's just like, okay, you write the blog, you backlink to yourself, and then it's just, Google sees it at, okay, it's a backlink, from this reputable place. And when I was like digging into our competitors, there's this one, Jergens launched a gripper, it's like $6,000. So it's like, whatever. But, I dug into it. It's super hard to find because they named it really badly. So called the MTS gripper. But when I did search for it, you can't even buy it online, but nevertheless, when I searched for it, I found like, 3 or 4 of those like paid guest blog, sometimes they're called industry news articles that a lot of the bigger companies have figured out, okay, when we do a product launch, we're going to pay for, 4 backlinks from reputable, kind of 15 to 40, SEO domain authority scores.
Yeah, backlinks are definitely a huge asset to drive that traffic and get good conversions. I think having house brand being focused, which is what you did first. So I think doing backlinks is good timing here because we really started, I'd say 3 to 4 months ago, taking any focus to going after any backlinks on an organic basis where you reach out and get linked because you created good content. Like, hey, we created this educational content about robotics. We see that you wrote this piece on your website. Maybe you should link us, and then we get links that way. So,
yeah, so that's one thing I'm learning because that was one thing I just don't know what I don't know. Like I know the basics. And the more I learned about SEO, SEM, the more I realized just how little our agency was doing. But I don't know what I'm doing with backlinks. And besides the obvious, like, paid promotion places, I don't know, how do we get to the smaller blogs? And I know you want to build kind of a, almost exponential decay curve where you have exponentially fewer backlinks of higher authority scores. So it looks organic, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I never heard that, but that makes
You're
a lot
not
of sense.
supposed to buy backlinks, but everybody in the industry does past a certain skill.
The more you get into the industry, you really stop trusting anything you read.
Yeah. and like every big, marketing thing, whether it's, Practical Machinist, Titans of CNC, the entire MTD, the entire list of like all the big names, they're all pay us a whole bunch of money, and we'll make videos. They're all marketing firms, and people just don't know that. Cool. Well, should we wrap up? Do the personal?
Yeah, I think you wanted me to talk about what I've been Googling, right?
Oh yeah. We just totally got sidetracked. Yeah. What have you been
I
researching
open
this
up my
week?
Googling. I think it'll segue into something personal for me too. So, and see if you can guess it based on what I've been Googling. I've been Googling bad dad jokes. I have a passion or kind of this love for the dumbest jokes, but I'm actually going to be a dad in March. So
Oh,
I've been
wow.
trying to step up my dad joke game. And we have our kind of end of year presentation. I'm like, what kind of dad jokes could I pack into this? But yeah, that's my personal exciting news is March. I should be a dad.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely exciting for Amanda and I because we thought we'd never actually have kids is what we had heard. So
Mhm.
it was kind of one of those fun surprises this year for us.
Yeah, that's preparing the jokes early.
Yeah. But I've always liked dad jokes, so it's
Mhm.
kind of fitting. Like the
It's a
guys
very
will always,
Midwest.
yeah, the guys always harass me about my shitty jokes.
Hmm. I like them too, but you just kind of get a blank stare in LA.
See, that's what I like about it. Like the fact that people are just like, God, just like palm on forehead, like, what's this guy on? But
Yeah.
all right, that's my personal tidbit. What about yourself?
Well, my dad drove out with a bunch of my old tools from like when I was in middle school, high school. I had like a little wood shop, so he brought like my lathe, my old like Cyclone dust collector, the old router table. So I'm gonna try to like put those together.
All right,
So maybe get a little bit back into. I would love to get back into like woodworking, but there's just not the time, But
it
at least.
requires a lot of patience and focus on that task.
Mm-hmm. So maybe wood turning on that little mini lathe. That's something that's approachable and that like you can make a bowl in an hour or two,
Yeah,
as opposed to like I'm going to build a cabinet set. That's just not going to happen with the amount of time I have.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And we dragged him to an escape room when my dad
You
was
did?
here. Yeah, we did.
How old's your dad? Okay,
50 something. I think
Okay.
late 50s.
yeah. I'm just always, I don't know why I'm curious about
49. That's what.
That's what he's gonna say.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to remember. My dad's almost exactly 40 years older than me,
Mhm.
so it's always really easy for me to quickly do that math.
Oh, 56. Sorry, Dad.
Okay, yeah, 49.
Maybe 57.
Yeah, this century's 49.
49.
That's what he would. That'd be a dad joke
You're
there.
49 till you're 60.
Yeah, and you're 50.
Yep. Well, what did you think of the new format?
I think it worked pretty good. I'd love to get some feedback from people once this one gets released. I like the cadence of it. It seemed to make sense. What about yourself?
I liked it. Yeah, it feels like it flows a little bit more naturally. We still get caught in tangents, but then it's like, oh yeah, like there's the next thing there.
That's us as humans. Like
Yeah.
we're both this level of ADD that's functional.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, I really liked it. If you're listening, like, comment, subscribe. That's YouTube.
Yeah.
Leave us a 5-star review on your
There you
favorite
go.
podcast player.
Perfect. Well,
Cool.
that's a wrap then, Michael.
All right. Yeah, let's wrap it up. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.